Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're diving deep into the world of attention and focus.
Sounds fascinating.
We've got some great material to work with, excerpts from Daniel Goleman's book Focus,
A classic.
plus a collection of your notes on related topics, from mindfulness to leadership. It's going to be quite a journey.
I'm excited to unpack all of this. It's amazing how much we take our attention for granted.
It really is.
It's the basis of how we learn, connect with others, and even how we succeed.
Absolutely.
So today, let's really try to understand those unseen forces that shape our experiences.
Yes, let's.
From those subtle cues we pick up on to the larger systems that influence our choices.
Okay, let's jump right in.
Oh.
Goleman starts Focus with an anecdote that really resonated with me.
Ah.
He talks about writing in a busy newsroom, surrounded by activity, and still being able to concentrate.
Right.
It reminded me of trying to work in a crowded coffee shop.
Yeah.
Somehow you manage to tune out all the noise and focus on your writing.
It's what Goleman calls selective attention.
Selective attention.
It might sound basic, but it's pretty incredible when you think about it. Our brains are flooded with stimuli constantly.
Right.
Yet we can choose to zero in on just one thing.
It is amazing.
William James, the father of psychology, described it as taking possession by the mind in clear and vivid form of one out of what seems several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful.
It is, but it captures the essence of what attention is all about.
Yeah, it does. It's like a spotlight in a dark room, illuminating only what we need to see.
Exactly.
But what I found even more mind-blowing was Goleman's point about our brainwaves syncing with sound when we're trying to focus on it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like our brains are actually dancing to the rhythm of the sound.
It highlights just how hard our brains are working to create order out of the chaos.
And of course, there are always distractions lurking, ready to pull our attention away.
Always. Goleman talks about two main types, sensory and emotional.
Sensory distractions, those are pretty obvious, right?
Mm.
Like a siren blaring outside or
Yeah.
construction noise.
Or even someone chewing loudly next to you.
Ugh. Yes, the worst. But emotional distractions, those are sneakier.
They are. The worries, anxieties, daydreams, all those things can creep up and completely derail you.
Exactly. It's like when you're trying to concentrate on a task, but you can't stop thinking about an upcoming deadline or a personal project.
Exactly. Those emotional distractions can be just as powerful as any external noise.
Definitely.
And what's interesting is that this tension between focusing and getting distracted, it's not just about external stimuli.
Right.
Goleman talks about the interplay of two different minds within our brain.
Two minds.
He calls them the top-down mind and the bottom-up mind.
Okay, so the top-down mind is like our conscious control, right?
Mhm.
Like the CEO of our brain, setting goals and making plans.
Precisely. It's the part of us that says, I'm going to focus on this and get it done.
Okay, I get it.
But then we have the bottom-up mind, which is more reactive and instinctual. It's driven by our emotions, habits, and those immediate impulses.
Like when you're scrolling through social media and get sucked into a rabbit hole of videos, even though you know you have work to do.
Exactly, the allure of the shiny object. And sometimes this bottom-up mind can sabotage our best intentions, especially when we need to perform.
Oh, I can see that.
Goleman gives this fascinating example of a baseball coach.
Okay.
He's trying to help his players, but focuses only on their mistakes, telling them what not to do.
You'd think that would help them improve, right? Learning from their errors.
You'd think so, but it actually backfires. By emphasizing what not to do, the coach is inadvertently making the players focus on those very things.
Ah, I see.
It creates a mental loop of anxiety and self-doubt.
So instead of focusing on executing the play, they become preoccupied with avoiding mistakes.
Exactly. They end up choking under pressure.
It's like that old saying, paralysis by analysis. Does this apply to other areas of life too?
Oh, absolutely. Learning a new skill, for example. If you overthink every step, you might actually perform worse.
It's like you're getting in your own way.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to trust your instincts and let the bottom-up mind take over.
That makes sense. But then there's the other side of the coin. Those times when our mind wanders aimlessly and we stumble upon a brilliant idea or solution.
Oh, yeah.
Like Goleman's anecdote about Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce.
What about him?
His big aha moment for Salesforce came to him while he was driving.
Interesting.
Not exactly the time you'd expect a groundbreaking business idea to strike.
So are you saying that mind wandering isn't always a bad thing?
It seems that way. It can actually unlock creativity.
It can. When our minds are allowed to wander, they can make unexpected connections, generate new ideas.
That's pretty cool.
It is, but we need to be careful not to romanticize mind wandering too much.
Right, because it can also be a major distraction, especially when we need to focus.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance.
Letting our minds roam free, but reining them in when necessary.
Exactly. And that brings us to something else Goleman emphasizes self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
He describes it as our inner compass or inner rudder,
Hmm.
that ability to understand our own thoughts, feelings, and motivations,
Okay.
and to use that understanding to make better choices.
That makes sense. It's like having a gut feeling about what's right or wrong, even if you can't explain it logically.
Precisely.
But how do we actually develop this inner compass?
Goleman points to the insula.
The insula.
It's a part of the brain that plays a key role in self-awareness.
I've never heard of that. What does it do?
It's part of the brain's emotional circuitry and helps us tune in to the subtle signals from our body.
Signals.
You know how your heart rate increases when you're anxious or your stomach clenches when you're nervous?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The insula helps process those sensations and connect them to our conscious awareness of emotions.
So it's like a bridge between our physical sensations and our emotional experience.
That's a great way to put it.
But self-awareness isn't just about looking inward, right? It's also about understanding how others perceive us,
Absolutely.
which can be a lot harder to grasp.
It can. Goleman talks about Bill George's True North groups at Harvard Business School.
Were those?
These groups are designed to help people gain self-awareness through feedback from others.
Interesting.
The idea is that we often don't have an accurate view of ourselves until we hear our story reflected back to us by those who know us well.
It's like holding up a mirror to your own behavior and seeing it through the eyes of others.
Exactly. We all have blind spots when it comes to self-perception.
We do.
Feedback from trusted sources can help illuminate those blind spots
Right.
and give us a more objective understanding of how we come across.
That's so valuable.
It is. And sometimes those insights can be surprising, even a little unsettling.
I bet.
Goleman talks about a study on surgeons' tone of voice.
Okay.
Researchers found a link between a domineering tone and a higher likelihood of malpractice lawsuits.
Wow, that's a powerful example.
It is. It highlights the importance of being aware of how we're communicating.
Because we don't always hear ourselves the way others do.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another crucial aspect of human connection: empathy.
Empathy.
The ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
Yes.
Goleman breaks it down into 3 types: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate.
Okay, let's break those down.
Cognitive empathy is about understanding another person's perspective.
Putting yourself in their shoes and seeing the world from their point of view.
Exactly.
And emotional empathy is more about feeling what they're feeling.
Right. It's having a visceral response to their emotions as if you were experiencing them yourself.
I can see the difference.
And then there's compassionate empathy, which takes it a step further.
How so?
It's about feeling moved to help, the desire to alleviate their suffering and support them.
So it's like a progression. First, you understand, then you feel, then you act.
That's a good way to think about it.
But what about people who lack empathy? Are they just wired differently?
Goleman explores that question through a chilling story.
What story?
It's about a charming murderer who actually made the interviewer laugh.
Oh, wow.
It's a stark example of how some individuals, especially sociopaths, process emotion differently.
So they're mimicking empathy, but not truly experiencing it.
Exactly. Their brains show activity in the language centers when processing emotional information.
What does that mean?
It suggests they're telling themselves about emotions rather than genuinely feeling them.
That's a bit scary, isn't it? Makes you wonder how many people might be lacking genuine empathy without us even realizing it.
It does raise that question. Can we truly understand another person's experience if we haven't walked in their shoes?
That's a good question. And it makes me think about Goleman's point about technology sometimes hindering empathy.
Oh, right.
He describes an experience where a nurse was taking his blood pressure while looking at a video monitor.
Instead of making eye contact with him.
Exactly.
I can see how that would create a sense of disconnect.
It did. Very impersonal.
And, research shows that power dynamics also play a role in empathy.
Really? How so?
Studies have found that people in positions of power tend to be less attuned to the emotions of those with less power.
That's interesting.
The more power someone has, the less likely they are to see the world from the perspective of those who have less.
That's a fascinating point. It makes you think about how power dynamics play out in all sorts of situations at work, in families, even in friendships.
Absolutely. It's something to be mindful of.
Speaking of seeing the bigger picture, that's a perfect segue into systems thinking,
Systems thinking.
that ability to recognize patterns and connections
Mhm.
within a larger system.
Right. Understanding that seemingly isolated events are often interconnected in ways we might not initially perceive.
Exactly.
Well,
Goleman starts this section with a great story about Larry Brilliant, the doctor who helped eradicate smallpox.
I only know that name.
He was recovering from an injury in a remote village in India and started collecting ancient Indian coins to pass the time.
An interesting hobby.
It seems random, but it led to a profound insight.
What was that?
He noticed patterns in where certain coins were found
Okay.
and realized they corresponded to ancient trade routes.
Wow. So something as simple as studying old coins gave him a glimpse into a larger historical system.
It did. It reminds us that even the mundane can offer unexpected insights when we look at things from a systems perspective.
Absolutely. It's about connecting the dots.
Goleman then talks about messes.
And messes.
He defines them as complex problems with interconnected causes and consequences,
Okay.
like water scarcity.
Right.
It's not just about a lack of rainfall. It's also about population growth, agricultural practices, pollution. All these factors tangle together.
So trying to solve a mess by focusing on just one element won't work.
It's like playing whack-a-mole. You might solve one problem, but another pops up somewhere else.
You need that systems perspective to see the whole picture and come up with effective solutions.
And that's where big data can play a crucial role.
Big data.
Goleman talks about Google's flu tracking system.
Oh, yeah.
They were able to predict flu outbreaks before traditional methods just by analyzing search queries.
So by looking at seemingly unrelated data points, they gained insights into a larger system.
Exactly, like finding a hidden message in a sea of information.
That's incredible. But having all that data is only part of the equation, right?
Right. We also need the ability to make sense of it, to
Hmm.
see the patterns and connect the dots.
Exactly.
And that's where systems literacy comes in.
Systems literacy.
Goleman points out that our brains aren't naturally wired for systems thinking. We evolved to focus on immediate threats and rewards.
Not complex, long-term challenges.
Exactly.
So we need to train our brains to think in a more systemic way.
To develop those mental models that allow us to grasp the complexity of the systems shaping our world.
And that's especially important for leaders.
Because they're the ones making decisions that impact not just individuals, but entire organizations and communities.
Exactly. They need to be able to see the big picture.
Which brings us to another fascinating topic Goleman explores.
Leadership.
Leadership. What does it take to be an effective leader in today's complex and interconnected world?
That's the big question. Goleman introduces the idea of the triple focus for leaders.
Triple focus.
He argues that it's not enough to just be smart or charismatic. Leaders need to balance self-awareness, empathy, and systems thinking.
All three. They need to understand their own strengths and weaknesses.
Connect with people on an emotional level.
And see the bigger picture of how their decisions impact the organization.
It's like a three-legged stool. If one leg is weak, the whole thing becomes unstable.
It does. Goleman really emphasizes the importance of long-term vision for leaders.
Long-term vision.
He contrasts it with the short-term focus of many organizations today, highlighting the downfall of BlackBerry as a cautionary tale.
BlackBerry. They were once the dominant player in the smartphone market.
They were, but they failed to adapt to the rise of touchscreen phones and app-based ecosystems. They were so focused on their existing strengths, their secure network and physical keyboards.
They missed the boat on the next wave of innovation.
And ultimately, it led to their demise. It's a stark reminder that no matter how successful you are today, you need to be constantly scanning the horizon.
For the next big thing.
Exactly.
And that requires a shift in mindset from a short-term focus to a long-term perspective.
Goleman talks about leaders needing to think in terms of decades, not just quarters.
He does. But that's a tough challenge in today's business environment.
It is. There's so much pressure to deliver immediate results.
There is, but Goleman suggests that leaders can cultivate a long-term perspective by focusing on the organization's values and overall mission.
So it's about remembering why the organization exists in the first place.
Exactly, and making sure that every decision aligns with those core principles.
Leading with purpose and integrity.
Precisely. And Goleman talks about how leaders need to be able to articulate a compelling vision for the future.
One that inspires and motivates people to work towards a common goal. It's not enough to just have a good strategy.
No.
You need to communicate it in a way that resonates with people.
Absolutely.
Get them excited about the possibility.
Exactly. And Goleman argues that this requires that same triple focus we talked about.
self-awareness, empathy, and systems thinking.
All three.
So leaders need to understand their own strengths and weaknesses, be able to connect with people on an emotional level, and see the big picture, how their decisions impact the organization as a whole.
Yes, bring those three elements together to create a leadership style that's both effective and inspiring.
But what about the people who work within these organizations?
Yeah.
What role does attention play in their success?
Goleman dedicates a whole section of the book to what he calls smart practice.
Smart practice. What's that?
It's a way of approaching learning and skill development
Right?
that maximizes attention and focus.
So it's not just about putting in the hours, but about how you practice.
Exactly. He argues that just clocking in hours isn't enough to achieve true mastery. It's about the quality of your practice, not just the quantity.
So it's about being intentional and strategic with your learning.
Precisely. Smart practice involves setting clear goals, focusing intently on specific areas you want to improve, and seeking feedback from experts to guide your development.
That reminds me of the concept of deliberate practice.
It's very similar. The key is to fully engage your attention in the learning process,
Right.
to be present and mindful of what you're doing.
Rather than just going through the motions.
Exactly. No more mindlessly scrolling through social media while you're supposed to be studying.
Right. Put away the distractions and give your brain the space it needs
Yes.
to absorb new information and build new skills.
Exactly. Easier said than done sometimes,
I know.
but I see the value in that.
Me too. And Goleman talks about breaking down complex skills into smaller chunks, right?
He does. He argues that this can make learning less overwhelming.
Right.
You can focus your attention on mastering one element at a time.
It's like tackling a big project by breaking it down into smaller, more achievable tasks.
Exactly. He uses this example of a simultaneous interpreter for the Dalai Lama.
Wow. That's got to be a high-pressure job.
It is.
I can imagine trying to translate in real time like that.
It's incredibly demanding.
It is.
The interpreter has to listen to the Dalai Lama in Tibetan,
Right.
mentally translate what he's saying into English,
Yeah.
and then deliver the translation in a clear and concise way, all while staying synchronized with the speaker.
My brain hurts just thinking about it. How do they do that?
Goleman says the interpreter breaks the task down into smaller chunks.
Okay.
He might focus on listening for key phrases
Right.
or mentally rehearsing the translation while the Dalai Lama is still speaking.
So it's about strategically allocating your attention to optimize your performance.
Exactly. And Goleman argues this same principle applies to all sorts of complex tasks.
From writing a book to learning a new language.
Precisely.
So even if we're not all interpreting for world leaders,
Right.
we can still apply these principles of smart practice
Yeah.
to our own learning and development.
Absolutely. The key is to be mindful of how you're approaching the learning process
Okay.
and use your attention strategically to maximize your results.
This whole conversation about attention has made me realize how much we take it for granted.
We do.
It really is the foundation of everything we do.
It is the gateway to our experiences, our
Right.
relationships, our understanding of the world.
It is. And attention isn't just about focusing on tasks
No.
or learning new skills.
No, it's also about being present in our lives,
Yes.
savoring the moment.
Mindfulness.
Exactly.
Paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
That's right. It's about noticing our thoughts,
Yeah.
feelings, and sensations without getting carried away by them.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness lately.
Right.
It seems like it's become really popular.
It has. And for good reason.
Why is that?
Goleman talks about how mindfulness can free us from the tyranny of our own minds.
The tyranny of our own minds. What does he mean by that?
He describes it as creating space between ourselves and our thoughts.
Okay.
So instead of being consumed by our worries,
Right.
anxieties, and all the mental chatter, we can observe them.
With a sense of detachment.
Exactly. It's like stepping back from the chaos of your mind,
Yeah.
becoming an observer rather than a participant.
I like that. That sounds really liberating.
It is. It allows us to see our thoughts and emotions more clearly,
Right.
and choose how we respond to them.
Rather than being swept away by them.
Precisely.
That's powerful.
Isn't mindfulness also about paying attention to our physical sensations?
Yes, it is. It's about noticing the sensations in our bodies.
Okay.
The feeling of our breath, the way our feet feel on the ground, the taste of our food.
It's about bringing our attention to the present moment and experiencing it fully, with all our senses.
Exactly. And this can help us appreciate the simple things in life.
The things we often take for granted.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And Goleman argues that this mindful awareness can have a huge impact on our well-being.
In what way? He cites studies that show mindfulness can reduce stress,
Okay.
improve sleep,
Really?
even boost our immune systems.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's not just about feeling calmer,
Yeah.
more focused. It's about improving our overall health.
It is. And the best part is that anyone can practice mindfulness.
You don't need any special equipment or anything.
Exactly.
So how do we get started? What are some simple ways to incorporate mindfulness into our lives?
Goleman suggests starting by simply paying attention to your breath.
Oh, okay.
It's a simple but powerful anchor to the present moment.
It's something we do all the time, but we rarely pay attention to it.
That's true. But by bringing our awareness to our breath,
Yeah.
we can begin to calm our minds
Okay.
and tune into the sensations of our bodies.
What about formal mindfulness meditation?
Goleman does recommend setting aside a few minutes each day
Okay.
to sit or lie down in a quiet place and simply observe the breath. He argues that this kind of regular practice can help us cultivate a deeper sense of awareness and inner peace.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
And that can have a ripple effect on all areas of our life.
precisely. He also suggests incorporating mindfulness into our daily routines.
So we can practice mindfulness while we're walking, eating, even doing the dishes.
Exactly. The key is to bring your full attention to whatever you're doing.
Even the most mundane tasks.
Yes, and to notice the sensations,
Okay.
the thoughts and the emotions that arise without judgment.
Being fully present in each moment.
Exactly, rather than letting our minds wander to the past or future.
It sounds like a powerful way to reduce stress,
It is.
increase our enjoyment of life,
Yeah,
cultivate a greater sense of peace and contentment.
precisely.
It sounds like mindfulness is a valuable tool for navigating this crazy world we live in.
It is.
Mhm.
And Goleman talks about how mindfulness is becoming more and more popular in the workplace.
Really? Why is that?
He cites examples of companies like Google and Target
Okay.
that have incorporated mindfulness programs into their corporate cultures.
What kind of program?
They offer their employees opportunities to practice mindfulness meditation,
Okay.
yoga, and other techniques.
Designed to enhance focus, reduce stress, and improve overall well-being.
Exactly. It's like a corporate wellness program for the mind.
I like that.
Hmm.
So this trend reflects a growing recognition of the importance of attention and focus
It does.
in today's fast-paced work environment.
It makes sense. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions,
Yes,
being able to focus is a valuable skill.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And employees who are more mindful
Yes.
are more productive, more engaged, and more resilient in the face of stress.
Exactly. Which benefits both the individual and the organization.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
But mindfulness isn't just for adults, right?
No, not at all. Goleman talks about cultivating attention skills in children.
From a young age.
Yes, if we can help kids develop strong attention skills early on,
Right.
it will set them up for success.
In all areas of their lives.
Exactly. He highlights a program called Inner Resilience.
Inner resilience.
That's being used in schools across the U.S.
What's the focus of the program?
It combines mindfulness,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence, and social skills training.
So it's a holistic approach
It is.
to developing the whole child.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it's been shown to have a positive impact on children's academic performance,
That's great.
their social and emotional well-being,
Yeah.
even their physical health.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
What are some of the techniques they use in this program?
They teach kids simple mindfulness exercises,
Like what?
like paying attention to their breath or noticing the sensations in their bodies.
Okay.
They also help them develop emotional literacy,
Emotional literacy.
the ability to identify and understand their own emotions and the emotions of others.
It sounds like a really valuable program. Wish they had that when I was a kid.
Me too. It highlights the fact that attention skills are not just innate talents.
They can be learned and developed through practice.
Exactly. Just like any other skill.
So we shouldn't just assume that some kids are naturally good at focusing, while others are not.
Everyone has the potential to improve.
That's a good point. And Goleman argues that we should be teaching these skills in schools,
He does.
alongside traditional academic subjects.
He believes attention training should be an integral part of every child's education.
Wow. Just as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yes, he does. It's like giving kids a set of tools.
That will help them navigate the complexities of life.
Exactly. And those tools will serve them well throughout their lives.
But what about those of us who are no longer in school? Can we still improve our attention skills?
Of course. It's never too late to learn.
I'm glad to hear that because my attention span isn't what it used to be. I feel like I'm constantly getting distracted.
You're not alone. We live in a world designed to distract
With
us.
all the notifications, social media feeds, and endless streams of content vying for our attention.
Exactly. But Goleman offers a variety of tips and techniques for improving attention in adulthood.
I'm all ears. What are some of his suggestions?
Well, he emphasizes getting enough sleep.
I know, I know. It sounds so simple, but it's true.
It is.
When I'm sleep deprived, I can barely function,
Sleep is crucial for our brains to function properly,
right?
including our ability to pay attention
When we're well rested, we're more alert, more focused.
and better able to process information.
It's like hitting the reset button for our brains.
Exactly. And along with sleep,
Yeah.
Goleman highlights managing stress.
Stress is a major attention killer.
It is. When we're stressed, our minds race,
It's true.
making it difficult to focus on anything else.
I know that feeling.
Stress triggers a cascade of physiological changes in our bodies,
Okay.
including the release of hormones that can interfere with attention.
So it's not just in our heads.
No,
Stress has a real physical impact on our ability to focus.
it does. And Goleman suggests a variety of stress management techniques,
Like what?
like mindfulness practices,
Uh-huh.
such as meditation or yoga.
To help calm the mind
Yes.
and reduce stress levels.
Exactly. These practices can help train our attention, regulate our emotions,
Right.
and develop a greater sense of inner peace.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And beyond sleep and stress management, Goleman talks about the importance of our environment too, right?
He does. He stresses creating a distraction-free workspace.
This is a tough one.
It can be, but even small changes can help,
Like what?
like turning off notifications on your phone
Okay.
or closing unnecessary tabs on your computer.
To minimize distraction
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries.
between ourselves and the digital world.
Yes. And being intentional with our time and energy.
Choosing where we direct our focus.
Exactly. Rather than letting it be dictated by external forces.
That's so important. You know, something I struggle with is knowing when to take breaks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I just need to power through a task.
Even when your brain is fried.
Exactly.
That's a common misconception.
It is.
Goleman actually emphasizes taking regular breaks.
Really? But doesn't that interrupt our flow?
Not necessarily. Our
Yeah.
attention spans are limited.
They are.
And trying to force ourselves to focus for long periods can backfire.
So it's like trying to run a marathon without stopping.
Exactly. Goleman suggests taking short breaks every hour or so
Okay.
to stretch, move around, or simply look away from your screen.
To give our brains a chance to rest.
Yes. And recharge so we can come back refreshed.
And that can actually make us more productive.
It can. Research has shown that.
That's interesting. It's counterintuitive.
It is. Sometimes we need to step away from a problem to see it clearly.
That makes sense. And speaking of challenging our attention, Goleman also recommends engaging in activities that push us cognitively.
He does. He suggests things like reading challenging books,
Okay.
learning a new language, or
Oh.
playing brain games.
Like a workout for our brains.
Exactly. These activities can help strengthen our attention muscles,
Right.
improve our overall cognitive flexibility.
So it's not just about minimizing distraction.
Yeah.
It's also about actively engaging our attention.
Yes, in stimulating and challenging ways.
That's a good point. And Goleman also highlights having a growth mindset.
When it comes to attention.
Right. Believing that our abilities can be developed.
Exactly, through effort and practice.
So instead of thinking of attention as something we're born with,
Yeah,
we need to view it as a skill that can be cultivated over time.
precisely.
Embracing the challenge and believing we can get better at focusing.
Yes, even if it feels difficult at times.
Exactly. And along with a growth mindset, Goleman talks about cultivating a positive outlook.
He does.
How does that relate to attention?
Well, research shows that optimistic and resilient people
Okay.
tend to have better attention skills.
Interesting. So our emotional state can actually impact our ability to focus?
It can. When we're feeling positive and hopeful,
Yeah.
we're more likely to be engaged and attentive.
But when we're down, stressed, or anxious,
Our attention suffers.
that makes sense.
Yes.
So if we want to improve our attention,
Yes,
we should start by focusing on the good things in our lives.
exactly. Cultivate a sense of gratitude. Practice self-compassion.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with positive influences.
It's about creating a mental and emotional environment that supports focus and well-being.
Precisely. And remember, attention is a journey, not a destination.
It's something we need to cultivate throughout our lives.
It is. And the benefits are well worth the effort.
This whole conversation about attention has been really insightful.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground.
From the inner workings of our brains to the complex systems that shape our world.
And we've seen how attention is essential for everything.
From learning to decision-making.
To leadership and innovation.
It's true. But the key takeaway is that attention is a precious resource.
It is one that deserves our attention.
It's the foundation of our experiences.
Our relationships.
And our success.
By understanding how attention works.
Yeah.
And by practicing these techniques.
We can learn to focus more effectively.
Achieve our goals.
And live more fulfilling lives.
That's a powerful message.
It is. It feels like we've been on this amazing journey, exploring the power of attention.
It has been a journey.
From how our brains focus
Right.
to the impact of attention on leadership.
Yeah.
Even global systems.
It's all connected.
All this talk about improving attention
Yeah.
makes me wonder, is it ever too late to start?
That's a great question.
Can we retrain our brains to be more focused as adults?
Absolutely. Goleman is very clear on this.
Okay, good.
It's never too late to learn and strengthen our attention.
I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes I feel like my attention span is shrinking by the day.
I think a lot of people feel that way, especially with all the digital stimulation nowadays.
It's true. It's like our brains are on overdrive.
Information overload. But the good news is we can take back control.
How?
Goleman offers a bunch of practical strategies for enhancing attention.
Even amidst all the chaos?
Even then, he starts with the basics.
Like what?
Getting enough sleep.
Sleep, right. I know it sounds simple, but I'm useless when I'm sleep deprived.
It's crucial. Sleep is essential for our brains to function properly.
Yeah.
And that includes our ability to pay attention.
Makes sense. When I'm well rested, I'm more alert, more focused.
You're better able to process information.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Along with sleep, Goleman highlights the importance of managing stress.
Oh, stress.
Yeah.
It's a huge attention drain.
It is when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's like your brain goes into overdrive.
I know the feeling. You can't focus on anything.
Stress triggers all sorts of physiological changes,
Okay.
including the release of hormones that can really mess with your attention.
So it's not just a feeling.
No,
Stress has a real physical impact on our ability to focus.
it does. Goleman suggests a lot of different stress management techniques.
Like what?
Things like mindfulness practices, meditation, yoga.
I can see how those would be helpful. They calm the mind.
They do. And bring your attention back to the present moment.
And they help us regulate our emotions, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a big source of distraction when you're stressed or anxious.
It's true. What else does Goleman suggest beyond sleep and stress?
He also talks about the importance of our environment.
Our surroundings.
He stresses the importance of having a distraction-free workspace.
That's a tough one these days.
It can be, but even small changes can make a big difference.
Like,
Turning off notifications on your phone, closing extra tabs on your computer.
just minimizing those distractions.
Exactly. Creating a more conducive environment for focus.
So it's about boundaries.
Boundaries are important. Reclaiming your attention from all the digital demands.
Being intentional with our time and our energy.
Right. Choosing where you want to direct your focus, not letting external forces dictate it.
That's so important. You know, I struggle with knowing when to take breaks.
That's something a lot of people struggle with.
I feel like I need to just power through even when I'm mentally exhausted.
That's a common misconception.
Really?
Goleman actually emphasizes taking regular breaks.
Breaks? I thought we were supposed to be focusing.
We are, but our attention spans have limits. Trying to force yourself to focus for too long can backfire.
Okay, so it's like a marathon. You can't just run without stopping.
Good analogy. He suggests taking short breaks every hour or so.
To do what?
Stretch, move around, look away from your screen,
Give your brain a chance to rest.
and recharge. Come back to the task with renewed focus.
So taking breaks actually makes us more productive.
It can. Research backs that up.
That's interesting. Kind of counterintuitive.
It is. Sometimes you need to step away to see things more clearly.
Makes sense. And speaking of challenging our attention, Goleman also suggests activities that, push our limits.
He does. Things like reading complex texts,
Okay.
learning a new language, or playing brain games.
Give our brains a workout.
Exactly. It helps strengthen those attention muscles, improve cognitive flexibility.
So it's not just about minimizing distractions.
Yeah.
It's also about actively engaging our attention.
In challenging ways.
Right. And Goleman talks about having a growth mindset.
When it comes to attention.
Right. believing that our abilities can be developed.
Through effort and practice.
So not just thinking about attention as something we're born with,
Right.
but as a skill that can be cultivated over time.
Exactly.
Embracing the challenge, even when it's difficult.
That's the key.
Believing we can get better at focusing,
Yes.
along with a growth mindset. Goleman also mentions a positive outlook.
He does.
How does that relate to attention?
There's research that shows optimistic and resilient people tend to have better attention skills.
Interesting.
When you're feeling positive, hopeful.
You're more engaged, more attentive.
But when you're down, stressed, anxious,
Your attention suffers.
it does. So focus on the good things in your life.
Makes sense. Cultivate gratitude.
Yeah.
Practice self-compassion.
Surround yourself with positive influences.
Create a good mental and emotional environment.
That supports focus and well-being. And remember, attention is a journey, not a destination.
It's something we nurture throughout our lives.
It is, and the benefits are worth it.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. We've covered so much.
We have, from the inner workings of the brain.
To the complex systems of the world.
And it all comes back to attention.
It does. Attention is essential for learning, decision-making, leadership, innovation.
Yeah.
The key takeaway for me is that attention is precious.
It is. It deserves our attention.
It's the foundation of everything. Our experiences, relationships, success.
If we understand how attention works,
And practice these techniques.
we can learn to focus more effectively, achieve our goals, live more fulfilling lives.
That's a powerful message. This has been a fascinating exploration of one of the most important human capacities, our ability to pay attention.
It really is.
And as we navigate the 21st century, this ability will only become more crucial.
So let's all make an effort to cultivate our attention
Focus on what matters most.
and use this powerful tool to create a more meaningful life.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of attention.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep your attention focused on what matters most.
And remember, the power of attention is within your grasp.